Welcome to the December 4th, 2023 TM Editor's Office Hour. As in previous sessions, I don't have a set agenda. I'm just here for 1 hour to see if anybody wants to come and chat, or if you have any questions. You're welcome to raise. This is really a casual conversation, so if anyone has any question, feel free to turn on your mic or let us know what question you have, or not necessarily to me, to other people in the meeting room. You're welcome to do so as well.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Lucy.
I'm Lucia, and a great pleasure to be here. And I have a quick question.
Okay.
About the current issues in the tourism management. As I like to question about 3,000 to 4,000 words. Would that be a suitable length for the submission about the current issues in tourism management?
According to the information we put on the website, current issue category is less than 5,000 words. So
yeah,
yes, 3,000-4,000 will be fine as long as you explain the issue clearly and with literature support. Just for your information, we're going to combine the current issue and the research notes categories because when the paper get published, both types of papers are listed under short communications, and that's based on the publisher's template. So we will combine the two. In the future, you may only see research notes, but we're going to revise the author's guideline so that the front part will be the current description of research notes, and then the second part will be the current description of current issues. So yes, you can still submit current issues, but just to let you know that when you are ready to submit, you may not see that category anymore because we will combine the two categories pretty soon.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Shrees from the Macau University of Science and Technology. So yes. I realize that we have some times now, so I would like to discuss with you and also the participants about a question about the mixed method, because as a student, I realized that the mixed method research now is quite popular for many journals. And I would like to know for journals like tourism management, when you review the article, use the mixed method, and what you are looking at, or the criteria, how you evaluate it. Could you please explain more?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I see a lot of papers now with not only mixed method, but also multiple studies in one manuscript. Sometimes multiple studies in one manuscript actually use the same method. For example, we've seen a lot of submission with experimental design, and then they may have 4 or 5 different studies that all use the experimental design. So multiple study does not necessarily mean multi-method. But yes, we do see multi-method articles being submitted. It depends on your research question. We've seen multi-method could be a mix of qualitative and quantitative, but it doesn't have to be that way. We've seen multiple quantitative methods or multiple qualitative methods. So I guess it all depends on your research question. What will be the most appropriate methods to use? The reason for using multi-method, I guess, is to avoid single method bias and to triangulate the findings from one method to another. For example, you can use, if you want to do purely qualitative, then you can use interviews, focus groups, and observations or other types of qualitative methods, and then see if you can compare the results, compare the findings from different methods. Then that will be one way of triangulation. Or you can do, for example, some people do qualitative and then survey and then qualitative, or qualitative and big data and qualitative. So there are a lot of different combinations that you can use, but which is better depending on the research question that you have. So you just reminded me that I just finished an editorial. It should be available now online, or it will be available soon. It's in the volume 101 of the tourism management. So if you go to the tourism management website, table of contents for volume 101, I talk about research method. That is a very often asked question.
Thank you. Thank you for the explanation. I also want to know that because I'm trying to learn and use mixed methods, so I want to know from your perspective, is that sometimes the sequential mixed method is more difficult, is that? And because that's what I understand, maybe I'm wrong. And I would like to know how, if you have study experience using sequential mixed method, how you address the difficult and challenge of using it. Thank you.
Well, it will take longer. Sequential means you do one after another, right? So you have to finish the first one, collect the data, analyze the data, summarize your findings, and then you do the next step. So yeah, it will take longer. And if you look at the typical skill development studies, they will go through like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different stages, and they are sequential. So for sequential, then that means the next step will be based on the finding of the previous step. So I guess that going back to my earlier point, you have to make sure that the different stages of the study, different methods that you use actually link to each other. They make sense to do them rather than study 1 is doing something different from study 2. And that's something we often hear from reviewers too, that is, this author has 3 different studies using different methods, but what's the relations between them? If there's no relationship, then there's no need to do mixed method, right? So you need to look at the overall research design, the overall plan, and how the different pieces can help you solve the original research questions that you have. I don't know if anybody else have experience of doing mixed method or sequential mixed method.
For me, I just have a question. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Related to the same. I think what I've observed so far, I'm a PhD student, by the way. What I've observed so far is what can I say, the bias that caused the quantitative research methods in terms of the reviewers and examiners, for example. In most cases, when you do a research which is purely qualitative, you meet a lot of criticism and questions which are more biased to the quantitative or mixed methods. So because of this, I've seen that most of the PhD students, or even maybe some master students or some researchers, they are forced to incorporate the quantitative aspect just because they're trying to avoid those questions or the criticisms. I don't know if that makes sense. So I wonder if the qualitative methods are not really accepted or recognized enough to be a research method, because most of the times when you do research in purely qualitative methods, you find that there are a lot of people who criticize you. They expect you to do some of the things which are not making sense in the qualitative kind of research. So because of that, I see a lot of people are forced to incorporate the quantitative aspect or the mixed methods aspect just for the sake of avoiding the criticism or questions. So I don't know how we can help the qualitative researchers to protect them from that bias, for example.
Well, I think there are two issues. One is you have to find the right reviewers, whether it's for thesis or for manuscript. If it's a qualitative study, then we need to find qualitative researcher with qualitative research expertise to evaluate the study. So that's from the reviewer side. And then from the author side, I guess just like quantitative method, for qualitative studies, you also need to demonstrate the reliability, trustworthiness, validity of the results. It is more difficult. A lot of the people who do quantitative research, because they don't know how to do qualitative research, it is more difficult, to be honest, because you need to have a very, very conceptual and very organized mind to really analyze qualitative data, and it takes a lot longer to analyze qualitative data. But then the burden is on the author to articulate and to demonstrate the trustworthiness of the results, because very often I understand the critique is your sample size is too small, but if you can justify why the sample size is small, and why is it the results are trustworthy, and why do you think even though you have a small sample size, the results can be considered reliable and applicable in similar situations? So I guess both from the reviewer side and from the author side, and that's why if there is a mixed match, if I don't understand qualitative study and you ask me to evaluate a qualitative study, I will look at that from a quantitative lens, and that's a problem. And I understand the pain you're going through because you have people using a different lens to look at the qualitative study. So we need to make sure that people who evaluate the paper understand the methodology, but then the burden is also on the author's side. Because you need to make it clear, not everybody understand qualitative study, therefore you need to demonstrate the same thing, trustworthiness, reliability, and doing the triangulation and all that. The reason, and also in the editorial, I mentioned about the perception that for example, tourism management and some other journals prefer quantitative study over qualitative study. Actually, it's not true. It is a self-selection process. Simply, we publish more quantitative studies simply because we receive more submissions that are quantitative in nature. And probably it's a reflection of the fact that there are more tourism researchers using quantitative methods than qualitative. That doesn't solve your immediate problem, but that's how I look at qualitative study.
Yeah, I think that's helpful, but then also maybe taking it in terms of if I want to submit my journal article or my manuscript to tourism management, for example, I wouldn't know the composition of the editorial team in terms of the expertise. I mean, in terms of the methods. For example, is it like maybe would there be a case whereby maybe most of them are quantitative biased, for example, else the reviewers themselves, because as soon as I submit it, it's beyond my control. I don't know who the reviewers would be and the editors. So what if I submit and then the reviewers or the editors are more of quantitative? So maybe that was my fear, but I think you have explained it to say it's my responsibility to clarify, to say how reliable is my research and trustworthiness and everything. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so you need to help the reader to understand where you're coming from.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there are two questions in the chat box. Should the references in tourism management submissions primarily focus on publications by tourism researchers? The answer is no. We are encouraging authors from the tourism discipline to read beyond tourism. And recently, in the past, I would say 2 or 3 years, we also see a lot of submission to tourism management from people outside of the tourism discipline, from general business, management, information system, accounting, finance, marketing, you name it. And we will encourage them to review tourism literature. So it's really, we value interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary research. Therefore, we will encourage authors, tourism scholars to review beyond tourism literature. And then scholars from outside of the tourism obviously needs to be familiar with the tourism literature when they prepare study that is relevant to the tourism field. The reason is very often we will see submissions, for example, by a tourism scholar, and simply using a method or studying a topic that has already been addressed in other disciplines, for example, in marketing or in psychology, then simply changing the context and collecting data in the tourism context, then that is not contribution to knowledge, because the knowledge is already created, is already been verified, for example, just not in tourism. So that kind of study probably will not be considered by reviewer as innovative, as contributing to theory building. So we definitely need to read beyond the tourism literature, depending on your area of study. That could mean the general economics literature, general psychology literature, general sociology literature, general. We have people doing mental health now, needs to go maybe into neuroscience. So yes, we do need to review the literature beyond tourism. Then, yeah, I think I answered part of the second question. Are there any specific criteria or guidelines that can help determine the appropriate inclusion of references from different disciplines? So that is based on the topic. If your topic is really looking at the sociology aspect of, for example, interaction between people, between tourists from different countries, between tourists and hosts, or between employees, then you may want to look into the sociology literature. If you're looking at mental health or how people processing information, then you can go look into the neurosciences literature. So depending on the root discipline of the concept that you're studying.
Thank you so much. I've always wondered, for example, in journals, we have a way of classifying the high-ranking journals. Sorry, there's background noise. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, just a little bit of
Yes,
echo,
yes.
but yes.
Okay, so there's a way of classifying journals. If I want to publish a journal, for example, I'm able to know that this is a high-ranking journal. I wonder if in terms of conferences, there's the same criteria that can be followed, for example, to know that this conference is maybe highly ranked or something. I don't know if my question makes sense. The way we do with the journals, for example.
For conferences, is there any ranking? Is that your question?
Yes. Like how do you know that this is a high-ranking conference or anything?
I don't think there's any ranking for conferences. It's probably two things. One, if it's organized or associated with a professional association, then usually that's a legitimate conference, and you can learn something by attending the conference. And the other is look at who's the organizer. If the organizer is somebody in a well-recognized university or research institution or organization, then that's probably worthy as well. Then you can look at the affiliated, for example, affiliated journals, or so you can look at the different clues to see if the conference is number one, legitimate, and number two, does that fit your interest? Because I understand there are lots and lots of conferences available every year, and some of them are for-profit activities organized by companies that just organize a lot of conferences and wanting people to go and pay the registration fee. That's how they make profit. But if you look at really who's organizing it, if it's associated with for example, tourism association globally, regionally of any particular country, then those should be okay. But I don't think there is any ranking of conferences. There is a question in the chat box. Is it worth discussing such a topic as the study of consumer decision-making of senior tourists in country of the development of virtual technology? I guess any topic is worthy of discussion. It's just finding the right angle. Obviously, consumer decision-making has been studied for quite a long history. And then senior tourists have also been studied on and off since the probably 1980s. But then different authors take on different focus. And then you're looking at the virtual technology, sure, why not? But then you need to find the right angle. What is your study so unique? What's new? I guess people are looking for novelty and for innovative research ideas. I can understand the pain of finding a research topic. It seems like everything has been studied before, but if you can find the right angle, then yes, anything is possible. The question is, does it matter if I present, for example, an Asian context paper at an African conference? I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters. As long as the conference organizer accept your paper, that means that they're interested. That means they have a room for you. And study context is only study context. I hope there is something more of a conceptual, theoretical, academic discussion behind the context, right? So if this is something happening in Asia, you happen to collect data in Asia, then there could be a similar issue in some of the African countries or cities that they will think, oh yeah, we can do that here, or we can, there's some takeaway from the study, even though it's in Asian context. So yeah, I don't think it matters.
Hi, Professor Hu. Yes, I read your article, and because I just go through it, and I realize it's really an interesting article. And you mentioned about the research paradigm on the qualitative study. I wonder why you think to mention the research paradigm is very important, especially for qualitative study. Thank you.
That goes back to the question earlier. I think there are different paradigms on the qualitative research, and that is just from the author's side to help the reviewer understand where they're coming from, because there are different ways of approaching qualitative study and different ways of collecting data, interpretation, and all that. And whereas for quantitative study, they're usually better understood. For example, if you do a survey, data collection, big data, people know exactly what you're doing. But for qualitative study, it takes a bit more explanation and interpretation, because it could be more contextualized, and it takes a lot of interpretation. And so we need to understand the author's perspective. where are you coming from? What is your position? What is your positionality? And so that's why earlier I said qualitative study. I think it's more difficult to analyze and to report, to summarize, and because of that process. So you need to make it very clear, where are you coming from? What approach are you using? And so explain that more specifically. Comparing to quantitative, it's pretty much people understand. For example, you do statistical analysis or you do big data analysis, people know that supposedly they're more objective, whereas for qualitative, then you need to demonstrate it's not purely a very subjective, difficult to replicate kind of study. So it's again that trying to articulate the trustworthiness of the results.
I understand now. Thank you. Thank you for your explanation.
You're welcome.
So recently I was talking with my supervisor, Professor Brent Moyle, and we were trying to decide the proper paradigm from a qualitative research that we're going to do. And he was advising me about some practices from social constructivistic researchers about not framing the research with the theoretical foundation of the research before. And instead of that, we needed to try to find maybe try to have an exploratory approach on the phenomena, and then see the appropriate theoretical foundation for the research. But I came from a very pragmatic / post-positivistic paradigm. So basically, my point is how tourism management see an approach like this, that instead of like presenting the theoretical foundation before, it will try to explore the phenomena, and then it's going to see what is the most appropriate theoretical foundation to analyze. I can try to be more objective. Sorry. A colleague of mine, my supervisor, was telling me that some social constructivistic researchers, they try to overview the phenomenon first, and then they're going to see the best theoretical foundation. So they don't present in the literature discussion in the beginning the theoretical foundation. They're going to discuss this in the results section. But for me, as a post-positivistic research, it doesn't seem right. But I know that there are differences between the paradigms, but my point is, do you receive papers like this, putting the theories just in the results sections to see which is the best theory to research a phenomenon? Or is this not common?
Are you doing qualitative or quantitative?
Yeah, actually, I have both. This paper in specific, it will be qualitative, but yeah, I came from a quantitative perspective. That's why I'm kind of having some troubles in this particular case.
Yeah. For qualitative studies, I've seen
Mhm.
both, going
Mhm.
both directions.
Mhm.
For example, if you use grounded theory, then that means there isn't any theory, right, to
Mhm.
underpin the study,
Mhm.
and then based on the
Mhm.
phenomenon, then you kind of develop to generate this theory from ground up. So that's one
Mhm.
way. And I've also seen studies that even it's qualitative, presented some guiding theoretical framework foundation at the front end, and then
Mhm.
trying to reflect, well, the theoretical underpinning will be at the front end, and that will guide the data analysis part, and then upon reflection, then the
Mhm.
results could be confirming or expanding or finding something new. So
Mhm.
for qualitative studies, I've seen both. but for
Mhm.
quantitative study,
No, yeah, quantitative. No, no.
yeah, it
No,
has to be, deductive. Yeah.
So, but from your experience as an editor, like, which one's more desirable, at least in terms of accept for publication?
Mm. I don't really have a preference. Honestly, I'm not a qualitative research
I
person.
know.
You know, I find it fascinating. I've been trying to do qualitative study in the past, only the past, I would say 5 or 10 years, because I find it fascinating. But I don't personally have a lot of training in qualitative research. So I don't really have a preference. If it looks all right, I will let the reviewer tells me whether they've done it, correctly. So I will look at the big picture. Does
Okay.
it generate anything new? Is it interesting? Tell me something that the literature hasn't told me, and then I will let the reviewer to figure out the technical issues. So yeah, I don't really have any preference.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
You're welcome.